right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, we're running a little late. So if you're looking for us right at 11, we try to start right at 11. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. Today, this was the culprit. Actually, it wasn't this one. This is the remake because the first one ended up all over my desk. Fortunately, it didn't hit any electronics, but it did make quite the mess. So my amazing wife made me a second one. Here it is. I may be sipping on it throughout the entire broadcast because, well, I'm hungry. So here we go. Speaking of amazing, beautiful wife, she's over in Studio 2. How are things over there in Studio 2, Miranda?
I'm fabulous.
Fabulous.
Merry Christmas. You're trying to do it to me again, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I have to focus like, I'm looking at my notes. You're like, let me interrupt your thoughts, dear. Yes. What would you like to know? What wisdom can I share with you today?
Well, first of all, we've got Lisa Bolo. She just commented, said hi to you and Aspen.
Oh, hello. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa. Thanks for joining us. Also, Annette's on here. Hey, Annette. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
Anyway, so if you see you get us on AB. So, Miranda, I'm noticing, is doing something I can't do. I can't wear clothes from when I was in high school. Miranda, what is that you're wearing that I've noticed someone else wearing?
My clothes.
Yeah, well, yesterday I said, I got to wear something tomorrow for the broadcast, right?
Yep.
And I packed all my clothes, almost. I'm like 3 things, And so I asked Aspen's pile of stuff. And I said, look at those pink pants and that shirt. And Aspen was standing there. I was like, I said, Aspen, I'm just going to borrow this stuff for tomorrow, okay? And she's like, but Mom, you can't do that. That's my clothes. And I said, yes, but. And we had an interesting conversation. And I reminded her in this conversation that the last time I bought a new pair of jeans, she got to wear them first.
Yes, true. I do remember that.
Yeah, so it seemed all fair to me. Finally, she said, but Mom, supposed to be the best thing about being an only child, since there's not all that many perks, I guess, to be an only child, she said, supposed to be the best thing about being an only child is that you don't have to share your clothes.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, if you think
all I could say was yes, but.
Yeah.
And well, thanks for pointing that out.
Yes,
there's got to be an analogy to that somewhere. I will come back with that later.
We will have an analogy on that one.
Because, when we come back.
Yes. So,
I'll have to think about it. Sorry.
That's all right. No, I just thought I'd throw that out because I noticed it. And, I couldn't do that if I wore, something from when I was in high school. I don't know if you've seen those pictures where the fathers are trying to teach their daughters not to wear short shorts, so they put their short shorts on from the 80s and walk around in public with them. That's what I would look like if I did that. So no one wants to see that.
Lucky for Brett, we went through his clothes and got rid of his 80s stuff probably 7 or 8 years ago now.
Yeah. Yep. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I found that box, I was like, what on earth?
Took it all. I do have, I think, 2 ties left from the 80s I threw in props for the drama team because they were pretty radical ties. But
yeah, he probably put them there so I wouldn't get my hands on them.
So it's
put them in the trash.
The real thin ones. If you were in the 80s, we had the real thin ties with the weird prints on them. So anyway, so we'll come back to that, and we're going to get going with things. Today we have several of our segments, and we're going to start off with Helping Hands. Helping Hands is where we try and give you ideas of how to change the world, make the world a better place, all from the comforts of your own home. We started the segment because when COVID started, we were all kind of staying at home. We were, isolating and stuff. And it's an attempt to say, well, even though we're stuck at home, there's still things we can do to help other people, to make the world a better place, to love your neighbor from the comforts of your own home without having to go out and risk getting sick. So, today's Helping Hands. If you've kept up with the news at all, you've seen the latest rates of COVID again, raging through the U.S. The positivity rates are up, and if you look at other charts, you'll see that patients into the hospitals is on a rise as well. And all these charts will show how they were, big increases, and they kind of drop off when we did the sort of nationwide shutdown and everything. And then as we've laxed the restrictions, it's all going back up. You also see the patients in hospitals and deaths over a period of time. All of these are on the increase. In fact, a couple days ago, two things happened in the same day. We hit an all-new record for deaths from COVID-related things, and also for hospital beds being taken up by COVID patients. And so it's another big raging through our country right now. Lots of people being affected. Us as well for the first time. My mom tested positive, and she is dealing with the COVID right now. My brother, who lives with her, fortunately has so far tested negative, but it's going to be one of these things that touches us all in some way, either very close or personally, or even in some, like a close by relative. And looking at it, for me, I'm looking at this and I'm going, man, this is like nothing ever before in my life. And so it's kind of this unprecedented experience, in my lifetime. But if you look over history, there are other times where, like in the beginning, they all likened it to the, Spanish flu that came through, I think in 1918, something like that. And anyway, I thought there was something interesting that was another parallel experience to some extent in history. In London, in 1952, I think it was, because London, as you know, is known for, or England is rain and fog, and on this particular, I think it was probably fall, winter, that they had a perfect storm combination of fog, weather pattern, and smoke from coal factories. So in the 50s, what they had done is they had built these coal factories, throughout London, and they were pumping out, chugging out, toxic fumes, toxic smoke. And most of the time it would go into the atmosphere and, blow away from London, I guess. But here, the weather patterns stopped it from being able to escape the area of London. And so they got really, really bad fog and smog. And it was so bad that police were wearing masks, which is kind of what, made me wonder, it's like, oh, here's a parallel. The police were wearing masks, and the streets were so dark, everybody was trying to wear masks or some sort of facial covering as they were going around the streets. And Winston Churchill was prime minister at the time. It was his second run, so he had already been prime minister during the World War II and everything, but it was his second run, and he went down to the hospital and he witnessed the things going on that were, overwhelming the nurses and the doctors, and he saw the people, being put in these, helmets to give them oxygen, and he witnessed firsthand how hard it could be on the healthcare workers. And that was the motivation for him. He went back and he vowed to get them money and resources to help ease the stress and the burden of taking care of all the people who were sick. And so he went back and did all his best to get help for the frontline workers. Well, that can happen to us as well. We've got our frontline healthcare workers who are in the hospital taking care of patients. Many times, you read stories where they're going to take care of them, but as they get worse and worse, you have to isolate, and the family can't go in, and people will die without having their family in the room with them. And it's been going on and on for a long time now, almost a year, and it can get really stressful, and it can leave healthcare workers feeling depressed and stressed and lonely, and There's even been some stories of healthcare workers committing suicide because they just couldn't handle the emotional, physical stress. And so, in Helping Hands, I wanted to challenge us all to do something. You don't have to go visit. You don't have to get out of your house. But I thought it might be a cool idea if we would take time to sit down and write a card, like an open letter of love and support to frontline healthcare workers. And not so much to a specific person, but to healthcare workers, nurses, and doctors in general. And actually handwrite one, because in today's world everything's email and done electronically. But to take the time to write one and then mail it to your local hospital or local clinic or somewhere, and add a note and said, please read this to all the workers. Leave it at the front desk and have all workers read this over a period of time. And just a note of love, encouragement, and support. And little things like that can go a very long way. And it's another kind of cool, creative way you can, fulfill Jesus' command to love your neighbor. Whether you know your neighbor or not, whether you know their name or not, you can make a difference in their life. And you never know, if you pray over it and ask God to use that note, how He might bring some sunshine and support to someone who needs it in just that particular time. So that's our Helping Hands. Reach out, support your local doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers, because right now is a really hard time on them as well. All right, so we're going to move on to our next segment called Story Time. Story time. We have a story to tell you. It was 1859, and let us know in the comments if you've ever been to Niagara Falls. Diane just got on. She said, the LaRues are quarantining. Jay and Diane are quarantining. Did you guys let us know if you've tested positive or sick or anything. We'll send you notes. But hopefully you guys are feeling all right. But thanks for joining us. And anyway, so yeah, back then, if you've been to Niagara Falls, we've been to Niagara Falls. Miranda has been to Niagara Falls.
Yes, we've been. It was interesting. Well, I did go when I was a kid as well, except I don't know why my mom got it in her head. We lived in Michigan and I was a kid, and she got in her head in the middle of winter, we're going to go see the Niagara Falls. It was frozen when we got there. And
so you saw it when it was ice? It was like frozen ice?
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I guess it was, but we didn't have that much money. It was just my mom and my sister and I, and we had a van, and it may have been cold out, but we got there and we slept in the van and that kind of stuff, So, yeah, it was interesting. But then again, you and I went. Yep,
we went, and it was not frozen.
No, it wasn't frozen.
But it was still pretty. Aspen was with us.
And we went on a Ferris wheel.
Yes. Aspen, go join Mommy. They're just sitting next to her. Yeah, talking to her mic, I guess. Aspen, you saw, that was your first time seeing Niagara Falls. And do you have any memories?
There was also an upside-down house. And somewhere later. But the Niagara Falls, it was large and loud.
Large and loud. And now we will test our 14-year-old daughter. Do you remember the name of the falls from the U.S. side? Or maybe it's Canada. Now I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's the Canadian side.
It's the Canadian side. What do they call Niagara Falls?
Horseshoe.
Horseshoe Falls. That's right. We saw the upside down house, and we went on the big carousel.
Carousel?
Not carousel. What was
Ferris
it?
wheel.
Ferris wheel. Yes, big Ferris wheel, so you could go up way high and you could see the falls from a distance. It was fun because no matter where we went, staying on side, you could feel the mist of the falls. They're so big, which is kind of cool. So, anyway.
Well, Ashley, I think, the falls was great and memorable, but that trip getting in and out of Canada was a little more memorable.
Yeah, getting in and out. This was before COVID, way before COVID. And, Getting in actually wasn't that hard. Getting in wasn't hard because I think we just used our license or whatever. We got in.
No, we actually had to have, nobody had any birth certificates. And you had to have something
Oh,
like
that's
that.
right. It was getting out we thought would be easy. So yeah.
So they searched our car.
Right, yeah,
and we had to
yeah.
sit there and wait, and Colby had to fax our birth certificates, and then he couldn't find mine, I think. But they let me in anyways with Brett and
Well,
Aspen.
they were lucky. I thought we were going to get shot because Miranda was driving, and as we pulled into the border, there was a female police officer, and she was telling Miranda to turn and park, and Miranda just kept going forward. I mean, this woman got angry and reached for a gun and was pointing in the parking lot, and like, Miranda, turn, and it's like, anyway, yes. But we went in, we called Colby, he texted or faxed the birth certificate, so they let us in. But going out, we thought we'd be fine because we had our birth certificate, but the American side, boy, he was ticked at us. He was like, not going to let us come back into the country because he was like, no, you have to have more than your birth certificate. You have to have your passport and stuff. And we were lucky to get back. We could have been Canadians wearing toques and going, how's it going, eh? That's what Canadians do. Anyway, back to story time. Enough wasting time. Niagara Falls, if you've been to Niagara Falls. And in the mid-50s, there was a man called Charles Blondin. And Charles Blondin was a daredevil tightrope walker. And he used to go back and forth across the falls. One time he, went across just by himself, back and forth, which is fun. But he kept doing bigger and bigger and more theatrical things, The next time he went, he put a bag over his head and walked across the falls. And then he had a man on his back and walked across the back of the falls. He went across once on stilts. And that one just blows me away, stilts. Because I know how you can feel the cable with your feet and everything, but man, to be on stilts, that's crazy. But continuing to get bigger and bigger and better and better, he took out a table and cookware, and he made an omelet halfway across. He sat down with a chair and a table, made an omelet, and had lunch. And pretty interesting stuff. One time he's kind of famous for is he went out and he how many of you, and he had a wheelbarrow, how many of you think I can go back and forth with this wheelbarrow? And the crowd cheers, yay, you can do it, and he does it. And then he fills the wheelbarrow up with really big and heavy rocks. And how many of you think I can go back and forth with a wheelbarrow full of rocks? And the crowd cheers, yay, you can do it, we believe. And back and forth he goes. And then he says, how many of you believe I can go back and forth with a human being, a person in this wheelbarrow? And big cheers, yay, you can do it, we believe. And he said, all right, who wants to go? And there was silence. And nobody would volunteer. Eventually, one man did volunteer, and he went back and forth across with him. But pastors love to use this story, and it's a true story, as an illustration of there's a difference between saying you believe something and acting on that belief. There's one thing to have faith and say, yes, I believe this is true. It's another thing to actually act upon that truth and put your faith into actions. Anything you want to add to that, Miranda, or shall we just move on?
No, I think maybe I can bring in my analogy to the previous thing we were talking
We're done
about.
with that.
Is, just like everything that Aspen came up with, like, well, remember, Mom, you bought those jeans, and when you brought them home, you said they were mine.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, yes, but, yes, but, yes, but. And those people clearly said the same thing. Oh, yes, but that's entirely different.
Yeah.
But think about it. I mean, that one man who did go across, he had quite the story to tell, quite the experience that he had lived through. And, he clearly had more faith in the man than anybody else in the crowd did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was changed, no doubt, because of that experience.
Yes. In fact, he was fairly famous himself after the fact that, people would come and write him and ask him stories. He was interviewed by the newspapers, what was it like, why'd you do it, and everything. So Yeah, he was forever associated with Charles Grodin in that story, which I guess is the same as acting on the faith with Jesus. We're forever linked to Jesus, sort of spiritual.
Yeah, and those experiences create strength.
Mm-hmm.
It increases the bond that we have with him.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. All right. Now, for everyone's, we're going to move on, and it's everyone's favorite subsection of our broadcast. This month, we're going to try and focus on holiday-type stuff for everything we do. We're going to try and, pull in the Christmas season and spirit for our broadcast. But today, in Aspen's object lesson, she's going to use candy canes and the science of candy canes to show the power of change. So here's Aspen's object lesson.
Hot chocolate, sugar plums, figgy pudding. All are synonymous with Christmas, but nothing says Christmas like the sweet treat candy cane. Today we're going to talk about the humble candy cane, some fun facts, some history, and a little science. If you've ever been to a Hallmark store, you know that there's a holiday for just about anything. And candy canes are no exception. In the US, we celebrate National Candy Cane Day on December 26th. No one's really sure why. Fun fact number 2. Each year, there is 1.2 billion candy canes made, and 90% of those are sold between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Fun fact number 3. The largest candy cane ever made was cooked up in 2012 by Chef Alan Roby from Geneva, Illinois. It was 51 feet long and took 900 pounds of sugar. That's a lot of sugar. People eat candy canes in all kinds of different ways. Some like to lick it until all the red peppermint is gone. This could take a while. And some people like to get right into it and bite it. This is one tough candy cane. On to fact number 5. In fact, 54% of candy cane eaters like to lick until all the red peppermint's gone. And 24% of candy cane eaters like to just bite and chew. Not surprisingly, boys are 2 times more likely to be crunchers. So when you look at a candy cane, you might wonder, has it always been red and white? Has it always had that curve? And why is it associated with Christmas? We'll answer these questions and more on our historical perspective of the humble candy cane. The tale of the candy cane begins in 1670 with the choir master at the Cologne Cathedral in Cologne, Germany. Apparently, there was a bit of a noise problem with the children during the Christmas program. It's said that he asked a local baker to make some sugar sticks for the children so that they would stay quiet during the traditional live nativity program at the church. He asked the baker to make the sticks with a bend at the end so they would look like shepherd's crooks to remind the children of the birth of Jesus. And the next historical stop for the candy cane was coming to America. In 1847, August Ingard, a German immigrant who moved to Wooster, Ohio, decorated his Christmas tree with candy canes. It was so popular with his neighbors that hanging candy canes on your Christmas tree soon became the stylish thing to do. Candy canes didn't always have stripes. Originally, they were straight, white, and were called sugar sticks. We aren't really sure who started adding the stripes, but candy canes started popping up with stripes around the early 1900s. Before 1950, all candy canes were made by hand. It took a lot of sugar, time, and patience just to make enough candy canes for one tree. But that all changed in 1952. Bob McCormick, and Father Gregory Keller worked together to design and build the first candy cane making machines. One machine would roll out the candy canes and add the peppermint stripe, while the second machine put the now iconic hook at the end. Finally, let's have a little bit of science fun with the candy cane. Specifically, we're going to use science to show you how to make a candy cane into different shapes after it's already been made. Once the candy canes are in the oven, what's going to happen is that they will heat up and cause the molecules to start moving around faster and faster. That will make the glucose bonds become weaker and weaker. The trick is to remove the candy canes while the bonds are weak enough to allow us to bend and shape the candy canes, and before they become so loose that they just melt. If you do it just right, you can bend the candy cane into whatever shape you want. People can be like candy canes, hard, stiff, unable to bend. Some people call that having a rock-hard heart. But God gave us a promise. Ezekiel 36:26 says, "And I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you, and I will take out your stony, stubborn heart and give you a tender, loving heart." But when we let the Holy Spirit in and He lights a fire in our hearts, He warms us up and can break the bonds of things that hold us back.
Hey, that was a lot of fun. I always say that, but they really are. It's a ton of fun.
Unless it's like 2 in the morning
At
and
2 in
you're
the
still
morning.
editing.
Which really is like the norm now. I mean, once we got done earlier, once, but it's usually always the Friday is the day we do. You know, I'm like, oh, the ideas come on Friday. I don't know why.
It's true.
It's true, but it was fun, and we actually had a few tries to begin with that didn't work out. It's not really hard, but candy canes, as you know, I mean, they break so easily. I'm not sure why. I guess maybe the bonds of the glucose aren't as strong as others. But I used to, even as a kid, I would just barely drop it or tap it or take the wrapping off, and it would break. And so when we were doing some of the first ones up front, we would bend them, but they cooled pretty quickly. And so if you keep trying to mold it after it's cooled, it'll snap, and that happened to us a couple of times. So if you want to do it, if you're going to try it, which is really kind of fun to do, just when you get them out of the oven, bend them a little bit. If they start to cool, just put them back in the oven for a couple of minutes, and then you can keep going. So it's better to do that than to keep it until it breaks. But yeah, we did several shapes, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, okay, well, first of all, as Brett says, sometimes things don't, the ideas don't come and the stuff doesn't come until later in the week. And it kind of happened with our personal experience story for this week to use as an illustration. First of all, Annette, I know you're watching. I want to thank you for being a true friend this week. You provided us with the personal experience illustration that we're going to be using to wrap up Aspen's video, and also to help shape up the rest of our talk today. And I know it wasn't fun for you, but we appreciate that. And just like I said this morning, remember that all things work together for good, and that clearly you were used by God for a bigger purpose. Even though I know it wasn't very much fun for you or your pocketbook.
Yeah.
Or Bob either. But anyways. Okay, so for the rest of you guys who don't know the rest of the story, Earlier this week, my friend Annette called me, and she'd just gotten off work, and she tried to start up her car, and it didn't start. So she figured she has a dead battery, right? That's usually your first guess. If your car isn't starting, you have a dead battery. So she gave me a call, and she says, hey, I really hate to do this, but can you come up and give my car a jump? And I said, sure, I can do that. Give me just a few minutes. And so Brett checked to make sure that the jumper cables were in the car, and I drove up to give her battery a jump start. Well, we let it, charge for a little while as we chatted, and then she got in the car, figured it had been long enough, and tried to start it. It did nothing. It just click, click, click. And so we let it charge. It was probably at least 15 or 20 minutes. We were standing outside talking and everything, and finally it's like, well, I think it's been long enough. We better, we'll give it a try again. Still, it did absolutely nothing. Just click, click, click. And so clearly this battery was either really, really dead and just needed a new one, or it was something else that was wrong. So sometimes that's how life is. We believe something to be the truth, and yet it's not. And so just looking at the candy cane and thinking, well, the candy cane, it's hard, right? Like Brett said, it's hard. And the only way to break it would be either drop it or just, break it like this, or you suck on it and it'll disappear that way and change its shape that way. And we think it's unchangeable, right? But it's not. If we heated it up like Aspen did, then you can change it. Every now and again, we think we're like the candy cane. We're like, well, I know I'm not perfect, but that's just how I am. And actually, the Holy Spirit, as Aspen said, is one who can come along and change us if we will allow him to do that. Sometimes we're like, no, not. We like life like it is. We like kind of living off in where we're living our truth and not the truth of God. Yeah. But it's easy to believe that our truth is the truth of God. That's been done before. Last week we talked about the story of the woman caught in adultery and how the scribes and Pharisees brought her to Jesus. And they said the truth. They said, Moses said that she must be stoned. What do you say? They had the truth. They knew it. They knew that they were God's chosen people, and they were right. That's all there was to it. And especially them, they were rich, and they were leadership in Israel. And so, they clearly had the truth. God had blessed them. And so Jesus, on the other hand, though, he had a bigger truth, did he not? Jesus had love and he had mercy. He did not just have the letter of the law, he also had the spirit of the law. And so Jesus took the spirit of the law in that situation, and he offered mercy to not only the woman caught in adultery, but to the scribes and Pharisees as well, who didn't even realize that they needed God's mercy. Because, without God's mercy, we would have no salvation. And that would be a really, really sad place to be. So anyways, Aspen said the original candy canes were straight, so I broke off the tip of one. It was rather easy actually. So I broke off the tip, and here we have what the original candy canes look like, straight, except they didn't have color in it either, okay? So we're going to say that this represents the knowledge of the world. It makes sense to us, pretty straightforward kind of stuff. And so let me give you an example of the truth of the knowledge of this world. The day after that I went to jump the car, and it didn't start. Well, the next day, Annette's husband went to Walmart and picked up a battery. And so Brett went ahead and gave Bob a ride up to the car, so it would just be easier that way. And I'll let Brett share what happened while he was up there.
Yeah, we went in and we finally changed the battery out. And Bob had gotten a battery, and he got a battery tool, and I'd had my tools there and stuff. So we changed the battery out. Turned out it wasn't the battery, because the new battery didn't start the car either. So he had to call for his tow service, and it was a little chilly, so we sat in my car and with the heater on, and that was just waiting for the tow service. While we were waiting, the people, actually the workers from the factory where we were at in the parking lot went by, and some of them reached through the fence and took and stole some of the tools that Bob had gotten. And Bob jumped out of the car and oh no, those are mine, and the one guy was like, well, you shouldn't leave them within reach, and took off with his tool.
Yeah. So the truth and the wisdom of this world says that it's best for me, then it's a good thing and it's the right thing to do. Kind of interesting, but true. We all would like to think that we aren't like that guy, but in smaller, more subtle ways, a lot of times we are. We use the truth of this world to live our lives.
Okay, hang on a second, Aspen's.
My mic is picking up your voice because your mic's the one that's creating really loud static.
Okay. All right, so a couple of audio issues here. Mine's creating loud static, apparently. So go ahead, Miranda, and
Okay.
I'm going to change my battery out.
Okay, so on a side note, on the shape, this is, so anyways, this looks kind of like a rod. This here looks like a staff, and this is what it became next. But this right here, it looks like a rod that the shepherd would use, and many times we think that the rod was used to discipline the sheep or something, keep them in line. But just because of that text, it says, spare the rod and spoil the child, basically. So that's not actually what the rod was used for. The rod was used to defend the sheep from the sheep's enemies. And actually, if we use God's truth and the wisdom the way God intended for us to use it, we would be serving others, protecting them from having their hearts hurt, basically, and our own hearts hurt because we get deceived by serving ourselves, and also deceived by believing that others should be serving us. That's what we use the rod for, basically. And we may use whatever force we deem necessary. But is actually just, we call it everyday living. We don't stop to think about it as bad in particular. It's just how we live life. Maybe we tell a little lie to them, or we might get angry with them. We may use guilt. We may manipulate a situation, all in hopes of getting others to serve us. Though, like I said, it's just called everyday living, is how we live, is we don't stop to think about it as not living out the truth and as actually hurting someone and hurting ourselves when we live like that. The rod is there to protect us, not to be used to hurt ourselves or others. So in the story that Aspen told us, okay, so first of all, it started out like this, and then the priest, right, Brett, took it and shaped it into a shepherd's rod. It just kind of slapped a little bit of Jesus on the wisdom of the world, right? That was kind of the next step. Sometimes our heart looks like this. Sometimes our heart looks like this. So slapping a little Jesus on the wisdom of the world would be much like talking about the love of Jesus, going to church, and all that kind of stuff, and yet not truly living the love of Jesus. And then, of course, we have the last heart, which I broke this morning when I picked it up and showed Brett my illustration. But here we have...
Miranda broke our heart.
Here we have the last heart, right? This is the heart that our heart should look like, the one that the Holy Spirit has come along and changed and softened for us. So we have 3 hearts today. We can either have this heart, we can have this heart, or we can have this heart. And so anyways, does the truth that we believe, the truth that we serve, does it get your engine started and going to places that you need to go in order to serve Jesus? Or does your starter just blame it on the battery? It's not my fault. That's just how I am. And so my friend, whose car has experience with that, her car seems to tell her, well, sorry, I just break down. Can't help it. It's how I am. And we do that a lot of times. It's our truth. Our truth, just living who we are.
Yeah, it was a trend way, not too long ago. A few years back, I used to see, maybe you saw this too, you'd see this on Facebook posts and Twitters and everything, and people would, highlight some fault or flaw of theirs or something. It's usually something, radical or crazy they did, and it was almost like a humble brag, and they would go, I da-da-da-da, whatever it is, and, I know it's crazy, but this is who I am, and, let's throw out something, kind of weird or stupid that they did, and like, well, that's just me, And there is some truth to accepting yourself for who you are, but it's like, you've probably heard this too. Jesus loves you where you're at, but he loves you too much to leave you where you're at. And, there's a thing about accepting us for who we are in the moment, but not staying there and going, with God, I can, change. And so
and
not using the excuse of, well, it's just me.
And like you say, with God, we can change because we aren't changing ourselves. It doesn't work out well at all.
But once again, Miranda has left out the most important text that relates to all of this.
Okay, go ahead.
It is taste and see that the Lord is good.
Right, but you can't taste that one because that's the heart. That's the heart. You can taste one of these.
Oh.
But they have plastic on them right now.
Yes, I can't because they have plastic.
Unless you want to lick it and make it stick back together.
Yeah. Yes, that might actually work. Anyway.
Yes. But another thing that I'm just going to tack on here, Brett said these were very breakable.
Yeah.
You know what? When we're living the truth of the world, we are very breakable as well. We shatter super easily under stress, anxiety, anger, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Yep, those bonds just break and, yeah. Okay.
Well, thanks for joining us.
And we're not done. We're just actually getting started. The fun is about to begin.
Yes, believe it or not, that was the intro.
Yeah, well,
everyone's turning off now.
I know. I've told Brett so many times that we could just take the beginning and turn it into a whole sermon, but we never get around to that beginning part until like Sabbath morning, But all things in good time, right?
So the question we're asking, actually kind of looking at today, is can you be deceived by the truth? Can truth, because the lies we say can deceive you, and Satan uses 90% truth, 10% lie, whatever, but can the truth itself, can we be deceived by truth itself?
Right, so I started reading Matthew 9 this week, and the first part of that chapter is a story of the paralytic that got let down through the roof and there into the presence of Jesus. And the first thing that Jesus said to him was, son, your sins are forgiven you. And when he said that, the scribes and Pharisees that were there said to themselves, this man can't say that. He blasphemes. Only God can forgive sins. And so Jesus, of course, knowing what they've thought, he says, well, which is easier to do? Forgive his sins, or just, tell him to take up his bed and walk. And anyways, actually, I skipped a part. In verse 4, Jesus says, why do you think evil in your hearts? And I thought, wait. First of all, when I read it, I thought to myself, well, I don't think evil in my heart, do I? And I'd like to have just skimmed right over that one and moved forward, but it kept kind of taking me back to it. And so I thought, all right, so what is thinking evil in my heart? Am I inadvertently doing that? Well, what Jesus meant at this point in time for them was the evil they were thinking was that he was not the Son of God. And so I thought, wait a second. Do we ever think that Jesus is not the Son of God? Well, we go, no, we don't. And we move right on. We are not like those scribes and Pharisees. We believe that Jesus is the Son of God. But do we live like that? Do we live out the truth of Jesus being the Son of God? Because if we honestly don't, then we're no different than the scribes and Pharisees were. But anyways, just a made-up little story, since it's the Christmas season, as an analogy. Take, for instance, you went to see the Nutcracker ballet for Christmas, and when you got there, you're expecting to see a bunch of leaps and twirls and all this kind of stuff, and people dressed in the costumes and everything. But instead, you just see a bunch of people come out on stage, and they're all the ballet dancers, at least they say that they are, and they each take a turn telling you the intricacies of how to dance, and yet not a single leap or twirl is seen. And so the thing is, we all know the verse in James 2:20 that says faith without works is dead. See, the ballet dancers could talk about how to dance all they wanted, but unless they started leaping and twirling, all their talk about dancing was rather dead, wasn't it? Because it didn't produce the works that you came to see. So anyways, we can't deny the power of God, as 2 Timothy 3:5 says, by having a form of godliness but denying its power. Or as a New Living Translation puts it, I like that one better, they will act religious, but they will reject the power that could make them godly. So basically, when the heat of the Holy Spirit comes along to break those bonds of sin, do we let him change our hearts? Or do we resist and hold on to our own truth, which sounds like the truth, and we believe to be the truth? Much like the Pharisees, they had good reason not to believe that Jesus was the Son of God. They had all these things lined up about who Jesus was, or who the Messiah was, and what he should be doing when he came to deliver them from their enemies. And this man, Jesus, was not living up to any of what they had, their preconceived truth of what the Messiah should be doing. And so therefore they didn't believe that he was the true Son of God. It made plenty of sense to them. They had done the research, and they knew who the Messiah should be, what he would be doing, and how he would be doing it, and probably what he would look like. Sure wouldn't look like a carpenter's son. So has my belief in the Son of God changed my actions? Or am I like the ballet dancer that we just talked about, that would come out and talk about it, talk about the love of Jesus and who Jesus is, and yet not actually going out and doing that?
So what we've got is, you're kind of, when you like, can you be deceived by the truth? And kind of what Miranda's saying is that, if you have the truth and you don't act on it, then yeah, you're kind of being deceived by the truth. You have it in your head, but you're not actually doing anything with it. So like when the paralytic was, brought to Jesus, so his friends had faith in Jesus, and that brought them to action to tear up Peter's roof. So we commend them for their faith, not so much for their methods. They were so passionate, desperate to get their friend in front of Jesus. When they saw the crowd, they're like, well, let's give him a skylight, he won't mind. And they lower their friend down to Jesus, which was very touching for Jesus. How committed and dedicated these friends were. Well, they were acting on their faith. They believed Jesus could help their friend, and so they brought him to Jesus and did everything they could to get him there. They acted. They were there for that purpose. Their motivation was from faith. The Pharisees were there too, but their motivation wasn't in faith. Their motivation to be there was to trap Jesus in some way, or to dispel him as a fake, right? And yet the Pharisees had truth. They had the law. They had, the Torah and everything, and that truth did not lead them to Jesus. That truth did not lead them to, do actions of love and faith. Instead, they, condemned Jesus. And, of course, then Jesus says, your sins are forgiven. And he knows, why do you think evil in your hearts? Again, denying that he was the Messiah. When they should have known, And almost Jesus, you've got the truth, and you're not letting it change you. You're not, even acknowledging it. You're denying it. And then he said, well, tell you what's easier to say, forgive your sins or rise up and walk? So you can believe I can forgive sins, rise up and walk. And so he gave them something, a healing to hang their faith on, that he could heal them spiritually as well. Mm-hmm. And yet the Pharisees left clinging to their truth without being changed.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for saying that better than I did.
No,
So anyways, yes. So how can we not be deceived? In 2 Thessalonians 2:10, Paul says we're deceived when we do not love the truth. Loving truth is more than just a knowledge of the truth or belief of the truth. Loving the truth means experience the truth by living out a loving relationship with Jesus. And
yeah, how many, love the truth, belong to the truth? There's one thing believing in the truth, it's another to belong to the truth.
right. And so, John 14:6, Jesus says that he is the truth, and he is the truth that we are to love. And Jesus explains that a little better in John 18:37, where he's talking to Pilate before his crucifixion.
Yeah.
And John 18:37 says, then you are a king, Pilate said. You say I am a king, Jesus answered. For this reason I was born and have come into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice.
Yeah, imagine that scene where, this is one of the two climaxes of the great controversy. Jesus dying on the cross was a climax of the great controversy. The second coming is the ultimate climax. But here in this room, you've got Pilate, Jesus, and Satan's there listening. And, Jesus is the personification of truth, and he's presenting truth to Pilate. And it's having an effect. It's getting to Pilate, And this is just guessing, but I can almost hear Jesus say those words, belong to the truth, listen to my voice, asking Pilate, listen to me. Are you listening to me? And Pilate almost, if you read Ellen White, almost convinced, and then Satan stirs up the crowd to take his attention away. Else, Pilate would have been convicted.
Right. And when a parent says, listen to me, to their 3-year-old, they aren't meaning now sit there and listen to me drone on about how you're supposed to behave yourself. No, when they say listen to me, it's like you had best get up and do what I just told you to do. That's what listen to me means, basically. It's not just hear what I have to say and then go off and, write on the walls. It's fine.
We've never had to do that with Aspen. Colby, yes.
Colby was a master of writing on the walls. I tell you what, that kid did not quit writing on the walls until he just felt like it. Yeah. Or maybe we just moved out of that house and then he couldn't write on those walls anymore. I don't remember. But anyways, he wrote on the walls. It didn't matter how many times you told him not to.
Yeah.
He just went ahead and did it anyways. But
isn't it funny nowadays? You wonder why they didn't think of this in the 50s and 60s, and say, nowadays, they'll make a kid's room with, paint or chalk paint or something, so they can write on the walls and it, erases off. Why didn't we think of that? I don't know. Things how long in life it takes us to learn things. How old I am today before I realized you could use your hair dryer to warm up the toilet seat.
Okay.
But think how simple it is, and I didn't think of it. I was like, because the bathroom was really cold, like, oh, wait a minute. I wonder if this would work. And it's like...
The man's a genius, right? He should patent it and,
yes,
start selling hair dryers as toilet seat warmers.
Toilet seat warmers, that's right.
Yeah, I'll bet you anything I wonder if they have warm toilet seats. Like if your room is just, your bathroom's cold.
Oh yeah, they have them. They have like warming up toilet seats.
Yeah,
like our Subaru has warming up the chair.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, our bathroom has a heat register in there, but it's ice cold in the winter. If you want to shower, you need to turn on the space heater or freeze to death. So, yeah.
Anyways, back to topic.
Back to the topic, which was John 18:37. So first of all, how did Jesus testify to the truth? Well, one of the definitions of testify is to serve as evidence or proof that something exists. And so Jesus showed up to give proof that he is the truth and that truth existed. Yeah. Okay, and notice he said, everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. He didn't say everyone who believes the truth, everyone who belongs to the truth.
Yeah, because, it even says in the, that the demons, the devils, believe and fear. So believing isn't the end all. It's belonging is what makes the difference.
Right. And so when we belong to the truth, in a sense, we are slaves to the truth. And when we're slaves to the truth, we must listen and do what the truth has asked us to do.
Paul says, I'm a slave to righteousness. That's kind of what he's talking about.
Just like Jesus did. Jesus lived out the truth while he was here. And so his entire existence on this earth was living out his loving relationship with his Father. He said that he's just here to do what his Father wanted him to do. Same with us. We are here to do what our Father in heaven wants us to do, the truth. Living out a loving relationship with him and with our neighbors, So, wow, I think we've got through this part faster than we did our intro. But anyways, to wrap it up, I'm going to compare us to being the car and to Jesus being the driver. And when he gets in the car...
Did we skip the part? I wanted to talk about, so it says, don't be deceived in the end times, even the elect or the smartest will be deceived.
Right, okay, it's true. I took that out because I was trying to make it shorter, and it worked really well, didn't it? But yes, I did. In the end, so what is the deception of the end times? It will be such a deception that, like you said, the very elect will be deceived. That's what the Bible says. It will be something much like Eve, for example. If she would have known that wasn't the truth that the serpent was telling her, certainly she wouldn't have done that. And the deceptions of the last days will be much the same. It will look so much like the truth. The truth is that we are to love God and love our neighbors. But which truths are we having? This one or this one? That's the deception. They're both candy canes. They're both talking about love. Which one's living it out?
And that's what when we were talking about this, what I thought would be the biggest difference, because when I was, in high school and stuff, and they would talk about the last days and, second coming events, and, it was like, it's going to be scary, and, even the smart theologians, and, if you're not really, really grounded in the truth, you'll be deceived, and that's kind of a scary thought. And, you got to ask yourself and wonder, well, what is that? How, what will be the deception? And there's all kinds of ideas about, well, it will be the Sabbath, and that will be the deception. Well, that's just too easy. That's not really deceptive. That's kind of I'm sure it's part of it, but that's just far too easy to identify. It's going to be something we haven't expected, or it's going to be bigger than we actually think it is. But I mean, even today, look around, the world, look around in the world of actually Christianity, and, can you find examples of people who are, leading mass throngs of congregations and who are, big leaders supposedly in the Christian church, and yet, if you look at their actions versus their words, they preach great sermons, they're up front in front of thousands of people, yet are they actually living love your neighbor? The simple truth of loving others and loving God more than anything. And I think you have to not just go by the words, you have to go by the actions. As the Bible says, you will know them by the fruits. And in the end times, that's kind of the thing to look for. Is whoever the person is, what are they doing? What are their actions saying? Are they following, Jesus' command of love God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself?
But if we've already deceived ourselves, we will then follow leaders who have the same deception that we already believe.
Yeah.
It's much easier to do that.
And they say things we want to be true, and we want to believe.
We want it to be true.
Thing.
We want it to be true that I don't have to, actually love that person in action. It's good enough just to talk about it and know the truth and go to church and sing the songs and all that kind of stuff. But what's the rest of the week look like? Or even what's your Sabbath look like when you're at church? Are you loving? Are you actually loving the other people that are there? And that's where the deception comes in. So much like the deception for Eve. It seemed like truth. Seemed like truth to her. It was truth. A lot of it was truth. So, yeah. Anyways, are you going to compare us to the car and Jesus is the driver. And when he gets in and tries to start us, does our starter work, or is it broken? And when Jesus tells us the truth of where he wants us to go, do we say, well, yes, but? Well, yes, but. And we have a perfectly good, sound reason not to go there and do that.
Like Jonah.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Lord, but these are terrible people. You don't want me to go there.
Yeah, and so it's very easy to say yes, but when Jesus asks us to actually put into practice loving our neighbor. And that's, I mean, how we're deceived by the truth. So we deceive ourselves because we refuse to honestly love God and Jesus for who they are.
To act on the truth.
Yeah.
Which is also the same thing as faith without works is dead. You can have faith, but if it doesn't do anything, it's dead. It's not making a change.
It's the works that provide the life to the belief.
Now,
but
because Adventists get a bad thing.
Yes, I know, yeah.
We're not righteous by works.
Absolutely not. Because we can't even do those works under our own power.
Yeah.
See, that's where the Holy Spirit comes in and melts our hearts. He melts those bonds that hold us together. He melts that.
Yeah.
And now we become changed, and we want to serve God. We want to because we love him so much. I mean, that kind of love just activates us.
Yeah, it's no more than the basic relationship principle that, like, relationships are the most powerful motivation for action and change. We do things because of a relationship. And that's kind of what we say about works. It's our relationship with God, relationship with Jesus. That's where the works spring from. It's out of that. So it's not doing works, to be good and be saved. It is, just a natural result of I'm in this relationship and I do these things because I want to do these things, or I want to do them for that person.
Yeah, we get really excited actually about doing the things. And if we don't, it's time to ask God to come in and change our hearts about that. Because and a lot of times we don't want to, but we know that we're in that relationship with God, and he wants us to do that, and so he can come along and change our hearts about that.
And I guess when we were going through all this, the story that kind of hit me at the end was we started with the lame man being healed in Peter's house, and it made me think of the lame man at the pool of Bethsaida, where, if you're not familiar with the story, there was a pool in Bethsaida, and the legend was an angel would come, stir the waters, and whoever gets in the water first gets healed. So it's healing by winning the lottery, I guess. And this man would have his friends bring him to the pool every day, and he would wait. Because he was paralyzed, he was paralytic, he was never going to get in the pool first. Someone was always going to beat him. Which part of the story that I thought would be interesting, but, the gospel writer thought not to include was, did this ever really work, Because if you're sitting there by the pool and you're never getting in, but you're seeing everybody go also in, and they go in and they don't come up, I think, maybe I'll try something else.
I wonder, like, back then it was probably a widely known thing.
Yeah.
Widely known, and so he didn't have to fill that in because it was widely known. He didn't stop to think that thousands of years from then it would not be widely known, and those who are reading it just...
Well, we would really like to know, but anyway, so Jesus, goes by on Sabbath, and, he sees this guy, and, and he says, what are you doing? And the guy's like, well, I can't get in the pool, And Jesus asks a really dumb question, which Jesus seems to do a lot to make a point. Do you want to be healed? And what does he expect the guy to say? No, I like it here. I'm getting a good tan. I think I'll just hang out for a while. No, of course, yes, he wants to be healed. And do you believe? Jesus asked him, do you believe? And he, believed. He had actually known about Jesus before the encounter, and he did believe Jesus. And so Jesus said, rise, take up your bed and walk, And I can only imagine if Jesus is at the pool and he says this with the crowds of people that, like, it's like that old, well, unless you're my age or around my age, you won't get this, but there used to be a commercial about investing, and there was, my investor is E.F. Hutton, and E.F. Hutton says, and then everybody in the commercial would stop and lean over and listen to what's coming next, because that was the authority power on investing. But Jesus says, rise up. I can see everybody stopping and looking like, what is going to happen? And so the man laying there, in the moment Jesus says, rise, take up your bed and walk. You know, he didn't feel anything different. Nothing changed. He was there. All he had was this Jesus telling him, do this. And it was the moment he acted on that word is when healing flooded through his body. It was when he took the words of Jesus, that truth, believed them, but not just believed them, he made an action to belong to that truth. And that's what changed his life.
Yeah, right. Just like ballet dancers dancing provides the proof, basically,
Yeah.
that they are.
And actually, I was thinking another theater thing with that. I used to do theater workshop or go to theater workshops, and I went to one where a guy was talking to us about set design and construction, and he had pictures and slides, and he was talking about how to do different things, and that was it. It was a really nice PowerPoint presentation. I went to another one on the same thing, but it was actually a guy down in the shop, and instead of PowerPoint, he gave us all brushes and some materials. He said, all right, we're gonna turn this blue styrofoam into a block of mahogany wood, and we did it. And the one guy talked about it. The other guy did it.
That's like the one man out of the crowd that went across Niagara Falls in the wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
He had the experience, and clearly it changed his life.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the workshop, I came home and I'm like, well, that's some interesting information. But then I had this piece of, styrofoam. I'm like, wow, look what I did. I had something. Again, talking about it versus doing it. Getting in the wheelbarrow, just saying it can happen. Deceiving by the truth means I have the truth, but it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I don't live the truth. And the Pharisees worshiped the law, which was true, the law, but not the lawgiver. They worshiped the truth, but not the truth giver. And when Jesus came along, they didn't even recognize the truth, which he was the embodiment of. And that's what we mean by being deceived by the truth. Can I be deceived? Yes, when we let the truth in, but we don't do anything with it. When it doesn't, we believe, but we don't belong. So that was a lot of fun. So like I said, with Aspen's Object Lessons, we're going to kind of try and do a holiday theme and keep that kind of going. If you haven't noticed, there was Christmas lights just about every camera shot we had. That's thanks to Aspen.
Yes, despite the fact that we are moving. Yes.
But we didn't go all out for Christmas, but we
No.
did put up some stuff.
Yeah, we have our tree up.
Yeah.
Only has lights on it because I just refuse to put balls on there. But
We'll show you that one next week. I thought about it this week and said, no, let's do it next week. Keep it as another, studio source, another little surprise. So next week we'll show you our tree and what Aspen did with putting a face on the tree. That was pretty fun.
yeah.
So, all right, well, have a great rest of your Sabbath. Thanks again for joining us. And if you have any comments or questions or anything, again, please let us know in the comments. We always keep up and we look at them even after the fact. So if you're watching later on, we still read comments. And let us know you were there. Have an awesome rest of your Sabbath day, and we'll see you next week.